Welcome into a special edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Elijah Evans, and I am really excited today to be joined by Riley Gowens, pitching prospect in the White Sox organization. I'm really pumped to talk to Riley about, just everything from being traded this offseason to then, starting with the organization and then, everything that's been going really well for him in Winston-Salem this year. So how you doing, man? Welcome on.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. It's exciting, right? I think it was a funky trade that brought you over to the White Sox, right? I remember a lot of fans kind of reacting. Five for one trade is not a common thing, right? It was a weird situation where Aaron Bummer went to the Braves, and you and four other guys, four mostly major league guys or almost major league guys came back to the White Sox. So first of all, what was it like being drafted last year, and then within 4 months being traded, not only traded but traded to a team in your home state?
Yeah, it was wild and probably the last thing I expected. When I was getting the call like that I was getting traded, it was probably the last thing I thought was going to happen. I thought I was in trouble or did something when I'm getting a call from the GM at like midnight, and then you pick up and they're like, "Hey man, we're sending you to Chicago. Good luck." And I had no idea like what to think or what to say right away. But once it's sunk in, you're going home to your hometown, get to play for the home
Yeah.
team, hopefully one day. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's got to be a cool experience, right? I mean, obviously, being traded that soon is a little freaky, but at the same time, like grew up in Illinois, right? You went to University of Illinois, right? So it's like it's a pretty cool experience and something that very few guys get the chance to do. Going back to that time was when you were kind of in high school in Illinois and then playing baseball as well in college. Did you have any interaction with the White Sox? Were the White Sox kind of on your were you on their radar? Were you being scouted by them early on?
Never really interacted with their scouting department. Maybe when I was younger in college, I can't really remember, but not during not during the draft process this
Yeah.
past year. But I did get like questionnaires and occasional emails and stuff from their scouting department, but never anything like one on one.
Yeah.
So that kind of came as a big surprise to get traded there without
Right.
much conversation. But I mean, it's from the area. I'm assuming I was probably a name they were relatively familiar with. Going up all the ranks. So that's probably kind of how it went down.
Yeah, I assume you were on the radar as well, but it's interesting that you never, really talk to them directly, because I think often you look for guys in trades that are, looked at by a front office at some point pretty directly, I think. So that's
Yeah.
interesting, especially being an Illinois guy, that you weren't on the exact draft radar. That's pretty fascinating. But
Yeah.
so you played at University of Illinois for a while, local and down in Champaign. What are some of the things you really learned being in Illinois and that have helped you kind of get to where you are today now?
Yeah. I mean, my career at Illinois was anything but smooth sailing. I tore I got Tommy John surgery in my freshman year, which carried into my sophomore year. Was supposed to come back, but then that was the COVID year, so it gets cut short. So I ended up not playing until my third year there. So there was a lot of time away from the game, gave me a lot of perspective on what life's like without baseball at the head of your life. So that was good to go through that. I think it kind of shaped me for some of the struggles I would eventually have at Illinois. I had a really good pitching coach there who developed me as a pitcher, but also developed me as like a young man, and trying to mold me into the person I am now. So I'm grateful for that, and that taught me a lot of lessons. But yeah, I mean, it was a great time there. I felt like I got better each year as a pitcher. Maybe I didn't get the results I wanted when you look at the stat sheet at the end of the year, but it definitely put me in a good position entering pro ball, where I'm at mentally and physically right now.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to hear. So, I mean, it's obviously going through all of that. Your first few years of school is a big adjustment for a young player, especially. What was kind of some of the parts of the Tommy John recovery, especially like that's something that these days it's more advanced than it used to be, right? Like it's not necessarily what it once was, but what are some of the aspects of that recovery that were challenging for you, maybe, and things that you kind of got better, honestly, as a pitcher through that recovery?
Yeah, I mean the actual recovery process was relatively smooth sailing. I had some soreness here and there, but never anything too terrible. My biggest issue was when I came back to pitching. It had just been so long. I tore my elbow at the end of my senior year of high school. It was a partial tear, and Illinois kind of wanted me to rehab it without surgery to see if we could do it that way. Didn't end up working. So by the time I had actually played in the game, it was like 850 plus days since I'd been on a mound.
Yeah.
So like just getting used to pitching again and throwing and like all like the basic stuff that comes with pitching that I'd lost in those 3 years of absence. So I'd say more on the back end of my recovery was probably the hardest, like just getting used to the game again and the flow when you're on the field. But the actual recovery process physically was pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's interesting that you say that. I mean, that's a long layoff. I think a lot of guys go through, whatever it is, usually 400 to 500 days, kind of that average recovery. But 800 something days of basically not playing a game is a lot to manage. And
Yeah.
once you're getting used to getting back on the mound, once you were kind of entering draft season at the end of your career in Illinois, what was that process like? Talking with the Braves and then just getting drafted. Did you know kind of when you were about to get drafted, or was it a little out of nowhere?
So I knew coming into the season, I was on the draft board for a lot of teams, had talked with a lot of orgs leading up to the season, had a fairly solid like first 6 or 7 weeks of my fifth year season. And then I pulled my oblique and kind of struggled the back half of that season. I missed about a month of time. And then when I came back, I just was kind of a shell of myself and struggled down the stretch. And so I kind of wasn't sure what the draft looked like. I'd gotten some phone calls, I'd heard from some teams, but I wasn't positive that I was going to get picked. But then I went to the draft league over the summer when I got healthy. And like a week before the draft, a lot of teams reached out talking money, talking all that stuff. So I kind of knew at that point that it was going to hopefully happen, or at least was going to get an opportunity in some capacity. But I wasn't sure what round, what team, anything like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. Kind of the ups and downs of figuring out when you might be getting drafted is what I've talked to a lot of guys in the org about. Like it's a really crazy process those few days when the draft is going on for sure.
I'm glad I never have to go through it again.
Yeah, yeah. I think almost everybody is, except the guys who go really early, maybe.
Yeah.
But once you were drafted, what were some of the immediate things before the trade that you started to work on, just in your game and your pitching, developing with the Braves organization?
Yeah, a lot of it had to do with off speed and small mechanical adjustments. But I think the good thing about pro baseball is they are drafting you and they see a vision for you, and they're not necessarily, for the most part, trying to switch everything up the second you get there. Like they draft you because they like you, and then they fine tune stuff. So for me, that was trying to throw my slider a tick harder. I'm not a big sweeper guy. I'm more of like a gyro-y short kind of slider guy. So being able to throw that pitch harder is definitely more beneficial. So that was a key. Fine tuning the changeup, which was like my third pitch, pretty inconsistent. That was kind of the goal. And just overall command. I think in college, you get into trouble when you're in 2-1 counts, 3-1 counts, 2-0 counts, 1-0. And so just learning to control the count with all of your pitches, including off speed, I feel like that's a really big pushing point for pro organizations once you get into pro ball.
Yeah, definitely. That's an important factor for a lot of guys. I think when they get drafted is immediately finding that the variability of all your different pitches and how to use them in different counts to get ahead. Once you came over to the White Sox organization, that was November. So I've talked to a lot of different guys about Brian Bannister and kind of there's a whole new regime of pitching and just the guys that are at the helm of just the pitching development and the staff of the organization. Are there any particular things they kind of started tweaking in terms of your pitches once you came over to the Sox org?
So they didn't really tweak anything with the fastball slider. That is my go-to. It's my 1-2 right now. And they were like, what you're doing with that is good. Like, just focus on the location, keep having confidence in it. The changeup, we've messed around with some grips because it's kind of my third, fourth pitch. So that we want to kind of figure out a way to maybe make that a plus pitch at some point. But the biggest thing they did for me was they showed me a curveball. And the way my fastball plays, it plays up in the zone. It's a low vertical approach angle, and it plays up in the zone. So having a curveball to kind of throw off that, which I've never had, is a really big reason why I think I'm seeing some of the results I'm getting so far this season. And that was coordinators, pitching coaches. We've been working on it ever since I got traded and moved over here, and it's been a really big pitch for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed the curveball play up pretty well in some of the starts I've watched in Winston this year. What would you say, kind of now that you're in this season and you have added that curveball, you're still messing with the changeup a little bit. What do you think is around your kind of breakdown of what you're throwing in terms of how often you're throwing all those pitches?
So right now I'm probably in the 50-60% fastball. And I think, the goal with that, as you move up the ranks, hopefully you play harder competition. That's probably going to have to shrink a little bit, but it plays up really well. So that's my go-to, probably about 25% slider. And then the last, whatever that is, 25% mix between changeup and curveball.
Yeah, that's about what I was going to say. I've noticed. I was thinking around 50 fastball, 25 slider. But you feel like that curveball's kind of taken some things to the next notch in general.
Yeah, and like maybe it's not necessarily a pitch I'm throwing 30 times a game, but when I do throw it, it's really effective and it
Yeah.
helps my fastball play up later into the game. In that
Yeah.
sixth, seventh inning, you don't want to be cornered to just throw only off speed because they've seen your heater now 3, 4 times. You want to be able to still
Yeah.
throw that and have confidence that you can get it.
Yeah, and mix it in. Is there any locations with those pitches that you kind of have learned since college at least? Is there anything you've learned to throw in different spots and or counts?
Fastballs up as opposed to down. In
Yeah.
college, I feel like there's the common, hey man, we're going to throw the ball low in the zone. We're going to paint the knees. And like, I understand that's the old homage of baseball, but I got a riding heater and that thing should be at the top rail every single time. And, that's in my bullpens. I'm trying to go middle up or above the zone every single time with the heater. And then off speed, it's not necessarily like any certain location, just down.
Yeah.
Like it's not, oh, down in glove side. It's just down lower third or below the zone. Because when I leak, I think most of the home runs I've given up this year and extra base hits are on breaking balls that have just leaked middle up.
Yeah.
And those get burned in pro ball.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I think you see a lot more of the prospects in this system and in general, just around baseball, that are using their riding fastballs just really high in the zone, and
Yeah.
it works, right? If you can get those pitches in the top corners, especially, like that's what is leading to a lot of success for guys.
Yeah.
What are some things like? Okay, in terms of counts, right, and just at bats and the way you're approaching guys right now, what are some of the biggest differences with the hitters you're facing, this year in high A versus last year in your first rookie ball single A games, and then going back to college too?
Yeah. I definitely think pro ball and college, in my opinion, is a really different game. Like it's hard to compare the two because college, there's such like an approach. Like there's so many different types of players in a lineup. Pro ball, I feel like there's a few different types of guys. You have a couple slap and dash guys, but most of the dudes are just trying to go gap to gap home run these days. And when I was in rookie ball and low A last year, there was definitely less or way more chase at pitches outside the zone. Like here, you got to establish your stuff before they'll chase. And I'm sure that it gets even harder to get chases the higher up you go. But I've noticed like if you're 1-0, you're kind of battling. Whereas maybe in low A rookie ball, you go 1-0, it's like I can throw a fastball and I'm probably back to 1-1.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's that difference in the counts and understanding how to manipulate it, right?
Yeah.
Not to, I'm gonna toot your horn a little bit here. You've got 63 strikeouts this season across 55 and a third. Only 19 walks, just a balance of command and also the strikeout stuff. Those two games in May, you had back-to-back games with 10 strikeouts and then 11 strikeouts, both in 7 innings. How comfortable do you feel working a full 6-7 inning game? And also, what do you think in those games in particular was working for you so well?
I love it. I think obviously there are going to be some days when you just have everything going. And those are the days you got to take advantage of, okay, I have 4 pitches going. I need to get through 6 or 7 here. Like this is a good day. I have to find a way to get through it. And there are going to be days when you're struggling and you're like, I got to find a way to get 4 or 5 innings. But on those days when I'm going deeper, I just feel like I have better feel this year compared to past years of off-speed pitches. In the 6th, 7th inning, if I haven't thrown a righty a changeup yet, and I all of a sudden start throwing changeups to righties, that definitely the dugout's like, whoa, what was that pitch? Like, what we got to worry about that now? Just put extra stuff in their head. So having all those options, the deeper you get into the game, being able to flash those options, I feel like has helped me kind of get deep.
Yeah, and then this past week, on Sunday you went 8 innings, only 2 hits, 6 Ks, no walks. That's another game where like I think it's cool to see the progression of command, not just stuff, right? Because
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's something that really matters at the lower levels is developing a consistency where you're not walking a lot of guys on a given day and you're
yeah.
pounding the zone. What are some of the big keys? I know you kind of just hit on it too, but what are some of the big keys behind that command just continually getting better for you this season?
Yeah. Right now we're throwing on a 7-day rotation.
Right.
So I have the ability to get 2 bullpens in per week as opposed to 1. If you're on a 5 or 6 day, you're not
Yeah.
going to touch the mound that many times. So I have the luxury of being able to touch the mound multiple times throughout the week. And the focus every single time you touch the mound for me is commanding your pitches where you want it to go. Specifically the fastball. If you have your fastball command, the odds are, you might not have all 3 off-speed pitches going, but if you have one going that plays off your fastball command, you have a chance to have a really good day. So just really commanding the heater. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing.
Start by pounding it early, and then you can mix in everything else from there.
Exactly.
Being in this organization now, and kind of your first spring training with the White Sox and everything, what is the general feel just in this farm system about where things are at right now? I think especially on the pitching side of things. On our podcast, we've been talking for weeks now about just how deep the pitching is. There's guys at every single level that are really impressive right now. What are some of the things you noticed just in spring training and then starting this season of just the general sense of the pitching throughout the White Sox org?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell there's an excitement about the farm system right now and where it's going to go. I mean, I obviously wasn't here in the past, so I don't know what it was like, but I've heard that we have a bunch of new staff members, coordinators, pitching guys, hitting guys, everything, and the culture they're creating is really, really good. And on top of it, you just have some insanely talented arms in the farm system. I mean, you look at that Birmingham rotation; those guys are for me, it's awesome to be able to be around those guys in spring training because they're such
Right.
professionals and they know exactly what they're doing. They know the type of pitchers they are and they know what their strengths are. So you get to see them work. It's like, all right, I got to find a way to kind of be like those guys.
Yeah,
So
no.
having dudes like that are just so dominant sets the precedent for the rest of the farm system.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the guys at Winston, I mean, the Birmingham guys, like that rotation is probably the best in minor league baseball right now, which is pretty crazy. In terms of the guys you've been with, this season from the start of the year till right now, what is there anybody in Winston that you kind of have latched onto or just kind of become tight with in a way where you're learning from them and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean our pitching staff is pretty tight. I think we got a really good clubhouse here. And the thing that I love about our starting rotation, at least, we're all I feel like pretty different pitchers.
Yeah,
You go down the line, you got a guy like Paulette who has just disgusting off speed stuff, can spin the hell out of everything. He's pitching his own way. Murphy's going to go pitch backwards to everybody. Schweitzer was just he was a lefty command guy who had everything and just competed his balls off out there. Schultz and McDougal are just absolute flamethrowers. I know they're now gone. So a couple of them are gone, but
yeah, no, for
it's
sure.
just it's a wide variety of pitchers. So getting to see how they all work is really, really good. And obviously, we're throwing every day. I get to see everyone's stuff. I get to see, oh, Schultz, how do you throw your stupid good slider?
Yeah.
And not that I'll ever throw one like that, but being able to have those conversations with kind of the high profile guys is really good for my development, at least, and I'm sure everyone else.
Yeah, and I'm sure, yeah, vice versa too. Like it just
Yeah.
in general, sharing all your thoughts with guys. I mean, you have those many guys that are talented like that. It makes it cool to just learn from each other. How crazy is it? Like the way you just mentioned Noah Schultz. I just want to ask, like, how crazy is it looking at the way he pitches and imagining a 6'9" dude that size like coming down the mound that way? Like it's pretty ridiculous to watch, even just as a
It's
spectator.
it's even crazier because he's just like such a chill guy. You're
Yeah,
like, oh, this is just like a chill, goofy 6'9" guy, and then he goes out there and he's just 97 with his slider wherever he wants it. Like
yeah.
it's insane watching that guy throw.
It's pretty crazy stuff. How about some of the hitters in the system? Is there anybody that or any just in general, the guys watching in spring training or even throwing against some of the other prospects in the system? Anybody that's kind of stuck out to you on your roster or just in spring training in general?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are a lot of really good batters in this farm system. I didn't get a chance to see a ton. I threw one live at bat and then we went right into playing other teams. So I didn't get to kind of face a ton of our guys. But in terms of like Winston, like the guys I get to watch, I mean, Gonzalez, obviously, he's such a pro. He's a pro as pro.
Yeah,
Same emotion, no matter what's going on, good or bad. Gonna have good ABs 99% of the time. So watching him, his operation's really impressive. We got a lot of other guys though in this lineup that are really solid. You look at Bryce Willits, Sean Gusenberg. We just got Eddie Park, Mario Camilletti. A lot of guys who just grind at bats, and you just know we're going to put up a
definitely.
good one every time they go up there.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly right. I think a lot of the guys in the system that you see there's this level of plate approach I think that I've noticed watching many different minor league systems, the teams this year of just the guys in the org are fighting and there's good at bats and it just looks like guys were taking smart, intelligent at bats almost every time they
Yeah,
get up to the plate, which is
yeah.
really exciting from an organizational perspective for sure. Off the field a little bit, we'll take it away from baseball for a sec. I know you talked about kind of your personal growth in college and everything else throughout the last few years. Is there anything? What are the things you like to do? Kind of anything you enjoy when you're not playing baseball?
I like to play cards. Sometimes I like to hop in the card games, but sometimes the stakes are a little too high for me. I'll sit out. But that's a good time. I'm a pretty simple guy. I like going to the field. I like playing baseball, and that's kind of really about it. I like to hang out with the dudes in the clubhouse, but when I'm back, I kind of just look forward to doing it again the next day.
Yeah.
But in the off season, I'm back in Chicago, so I get to I'm around there. I get to enjoy the nice city, but I'm not really looking to do anything too crazy most of the time.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm surprised you didn't say golf. I feel like golf's the instant answer from almost everybody, but
Everyone's trying to get me.
Oh,
I've
really?
never golfed a round in my life,
Huh.
and
Wow,
everyone's just been
interesting.
telling me like, dude, like you got to learn how to golf if you're going to be a pitcher. And I'm like, all right, I'll figure it out at
That's
some point.
That's what everybody tells me. That's what I hear from all the different pitchers is, golf, golf, golf. And I just started playing recently myself. So I get it. It's not for everyone immediately, but you might get pulled in at some point.
Yeah.
For all of our listeners, we got a lot of Illinois people that are White Sox fans in general. What was your go-to spot down in Champaign?
Oh, best breakfast spot, Marianne's, no doubt. It's a diner, famous diner. Pizza spot, Papa Del's. It's like a Chicago deep dish style pizza joint. Um, God, I mean, they got a lot of spots. I was a big sushi guy. I'd always hit Sakanaya, which is a big time sushi on Green Street. But I mean, you can't go wrong there. It's a good
Yeah,
college town, a lot of good spots.
definitely a good college town. I spent a handful of weekends down there. It's a
Yeah,
fun time for sure.
almost too fun
Yeah,
sometimes.
right. Going into kind of the rest of the season, we'll wrap on this. Just what are some of your big goals? You've got what it's the middle of June. You've got 2.5 months or so at high A, at least for the season right now. What are some of the goals you really have for yourself, just to finish out this year strong?
Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice I got from my college pitching coach when I made the transition to pro ball. He just reminded me, be where your feet are. And I think it's easy, right now to be like, oh, I'd love to, finish the year at this level, this level. I'd love to finish with these stats and these strikeouts and all that stuff. But I love my job. I love showing up to the field every day. So the main goal is just be where my feet are every single day. And I have a good feeling, if you continue to do that, that you'll be where you want to be at the end of the season. So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to be where I'm at for every day for the rest of the season.
That's the great mindset, and it's working for you right now. So keep it up. We look forward to seeing where everything goes for you. It's really exciting to see an Illinois guy thriving in the system right now, and we really appreciate you taking the time to get fans a chance to know you a little bit today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.